Hi, I'm Katie Wilson and welcome to A News. Here are the headlines. The Trump administration issues order to begin easing sanctions on Syria. EU trade chief says the EU is committed to securing a deal with the US based on respect, not threats. 18 people were injured following a knife attack at Hamburg Central Station. The Trump administration has issued orders to effectively lift sanctions on Syria, a move in line with the pledge President Trump made during his visit to the Middle East.
The United States government has announced orders to lift sanctions on Syria. This comes after US President Donald Trump's pledge to unwind the measures during his visit to Saudi Arabia, where he met with Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Sharaa last week. The move is meant to help Syria recover from years of a devastating civil war that resulted in the ousting of former leader Bashar al-Assad. The U.S. Treasury Department has issued what it calls the Syria GL-25 license that will authorize transactions prohibited by the Syrian sanctions regulations and enable new investment and private sector activity. Additionally, the U.S. State Department has simultaneously issued a 180-day waiver under the Caesar Act, which, among other provisions, contains extensive secondary sanctions on non-U.S. entities facilitating transactions related to reconstruction in Syria. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said the waivers will facilitate the provision of electricity, energy and water and enable a more effective humanitarian response across the country. Syria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has welcomed the decision, calling it a positive step in the right direction towards relieving humanitarian and economic suffering in the country.
President Trump is threatening a 50% tariff on all European Union imports, starting on June the 1st. He warned Apple, make iPhones in the US or pay a 25% tariff.
US President Donald Trump is stepping up trade pressure on two major fronts, the European Union and tech giant Apple, sparking new worries in global markets. Trump recommended a steep 50% tariff on all imports from the European Union, starting June 1st. The move comes amid stalled trade talks with the bloc, which Trump accused of taking advantage of the United States. The White House says the tariffs aim to address the US trade deficit with the EU, which topped $235 billion last year. At the same time, Trump said Apple will face a 25% tariff on iPhones sold in the US that are not made in the country. He informed Apple CEO Tim Cook that iPhones sold in the US must be manufactured domestically, not in countries like India or Vietnam. The president insists that to avoid the tariff, Apple must bring manufacturing back home. Experts warn these tariffs could drive up prices, with iPhones potentially costing hundreds or even thousands more. Markets reacted immediately. Wall Street opened sharply lower on Friday. The Dow Jones dropped over 330 points, while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq each fell more than 1%. Apple shares were down 2.5% at the open. In Europe, officials responded cautiously but firmly. French Trade Minister Laurent Saint-Martin called Trump's tariff threat unhelpful to ongoing talks and said the EU is ready to respond if needed. Meanwhile, Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof expects a calm but firm reaction from the European Commission, which is scheduled to speak with US trade representatives later today. German Economy Minister Katharina Reich warned that trade conflicts hurt both sides equally and urged the European Commission to work toward a negotiated solution, with the US-German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul said the European Commission has full backing from Berlin. He warned such tariffs would harm both economies and called for continued negotiations to protect the transatlantic trade relationship.
It is up to the European Commission to respond. It has our full support in maintaining our access to the American market, and I believe that such tariffs do not help anyone, but would only lead to economic development in both markets to suffer as a result. And that's why we continue to pursue negotiations and support the European Commission. We want to defend Europe and the European market while simultaneously exerting the power of persuasion in America.
The European Commission itself has asked for clarification on the tariff proposal before making any official response. As tensions rise, global markets are closely watching whether the EU and Apple will push back, and how these new tariffs could reshape global trade in the coming months.
The European Union's Trade Commissioner Maros Šefčovič has vowed to defend the bloc's interests and has called for trade based on respect and not threats. This comes after President Trump threatened to slap a 50% tariff on all goods sent to the US from the EU. Šefčovič said that the EU is fully engaged and committed to securing a deal that works for both parties. Trump earlier expressed impatience with the pace of ongoing EU-US trade negotiations, saying his plan to raise tariffs was set for the 1st of June.
Under undue pressure.
Explosions hit Ukraine's capital Kyiv early on Saturday as air raid sirens echoed across the city. Several people were injured and buildings were damaged. Officials reported drone and missile strikes across multiple districts of Kyiv overnight. At least 8 people were injured and emergency crews were deployed. The city remained under air alert for over 7 hours. The strikes followed Russia's warning of a response after a series of Ukrainian drone attacks on Russia in recent days, including on Moscow. Russia will be ready to hand Ukraine a draft document outlining conditions for a long-term peace agreement once the current prisoner exchange is completed. That's according to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Russia and Ukraine each released 390 prisoners on Friday and said they would free more in the coming days, in what is expected to be the biggest prisoner swap of the war so far. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the process would continue through the weekend. The deal to exchange 1,000 prisoners each was the only tangible outcome from face-to-face talks in Istanbul last week, marking the first direct negotiations between the two sides in over 3 years. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has downplayed the possibility of the Vatican playing a mediating role in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, calling it an inelegant solution.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has cast doubt over the Vatican as a potential location for peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. This comes after Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said that Pope Leo XIV had confirmed his willingness to host talks during a phone call. Pope Leo, the first US-born pontiff, stated soon after his election this month that the Vatican could act as a mediator in global conflicts, without specifically mentioning Russia and Ukraine. Lavrov has called the solution inelegant and says it would put the Vatican in an uncomfortable position.
Imagine the Vatican as a venue for negotiations. It would be a bit inelegant for Orthodox countries to use a Catholic platform to discuss issues on how to remove the root causes of the conflict.
Ukraine, however, has expressed openness to the notion of the Vatican as host, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has also suggested Turkey and Switzerland as alternative venues. The Vatican said the idea of hosting or even mediating talks, which US President Donald Trump suggested was an option, is more a hope for now than any concrete plan.
The 5th round of indirect negotiations between the United States and Iran over Tehran's nuclear program concluded in Rome on Friday. Iranian and US negotiators resumed talks to resolve a decades-long dispute over Iran's nuclear ambitions. The talks between the two sides were mediated by Oman and ended without an agreement. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that the sides can reach solutions that will allow the negotiations to progress over the next 1 or 2 meetings. A US official said that the two sides had agreed to reconvene in the near future. To discuss the latest on US-Iran nuclear talks, we're now joined by political analyst Enrique Casero. Thank you for being with us. Now, given that the 5th round of indirect talks ended without an agreement, what are the key sticking points currently preventing progress between the US and Iran?
This is one of those negotiations in which anything can completely get rodden if anyone finds any kind of excuse to rodden it up. So first and foremost, it's important to understand that Iran wants to keep their nuclear development in order to being sort of a powerful country on the Middle East area. Of course, the United States are not going to allow that, or they're going to try to prevent any movement towards that aim, towards that goal. But one of the things that Iran is pretending and is trying to get is given a mix, given either on the same time coordinate development of nuclear energy and nuclear development for both uses, army, military, and civil. And probably this, I think this is a very clever step to be recognized to Iran, because we're being witness of a lot of countries, including China, with the shipbuilding, that they're doing the same. They are mixing. They are making some kind of hybrid development industries in order to reach both goals and share technology, having civil technology in order to improve the military one, and having military technology in order to improve the civil one. So I think Iran is going to try to get that momentum in order to say, okay, this is not for just weapons or just militarize Iran or make Iran a nuclear power, but because I guess we need energy. We need this is a place in which many kinds of energy are not allowed to have, or gas is too expensive. I don't know. The excuses could be huge, but try to get that hybrid plan and that hybrid strategy of both military and civil nuclear development. I think that's going to be the great step for Iran.
So thinking about the talks themselves, how significant is Oman's role as a mediator here, and what influence can it realistically exert to help make a breakthrough?
Right now, for me, the main success and the main breakthrough, it's the talks are taking place in Rome, and the both parts are going to them. They're talking. What the reach is for me right now is hard to tell, because I don't have any kind of information within the talks. But I guess that they're gonna be tough. They're gonna be tough because the United States don't want to risk to have another nuclear country on the area. Let's not forget that India and Pakistan, they got nuclear power as well in order to build weapons. And but let's gonna see the thing with some hope, because they're talking, and this level of not agreement, but this level of trying to get into an agreement, or trying to reach a higher point in the negotiation, for me is itself quite relevant.
Thank you so much for your insights there and for joining us on the programme.
Thank you.
Now, 18 people have been left with life-threatening injuries following a knife attack at Hamburg Central Station on Friday evening. A 39-year-old German woman was arrested at the scene and remains in custody. Police say she is believed to have acted alone and was possibly in a state of mental distress. Authorities have ruled out any political motive at this stage. She is expected to appear in court on Saturday. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz called the attack shocking and praised the swift response of emergency services. Climate activists stormed BNP Paribas in Paris, accusing the bank of fueling fossil fuel projects by French energy giant TotalEnergies. The protest comes amid rising investor pressure at the company's annual shareholders meeting for greater climate accountability.
Climate activists from Extinction Rebellion entered BNP Paribas Paris offices on Friday. A small group of protesters went into the building, staging their demonstration with fake banknotes and champagne before police removed them. They accused the bank of financing TotalEnergies' fossil fuel expansion. Activists criticised the company's controversial projects, calling them an environmental and human rights disaster.
TotalEnergies is the emblem of companies that are harmful from a climate point of view with absolute cynicism. We must still remember that their oil extraction project in Uganda is a disaster, but not only an environmental one.
BNP Paribas condemned the protest as aggressive, but reaffirmed its commitment to supporting the energy transition. The demonstration happened during TotalEnergies' annual shareholders' meeting, where investors are demanding greater accountability on climate issues. Important issues include human rights and biodiversity related to the East African crude oil pipeline and upcoming fossil fuel projects in Mozambique and Namibia. In 2023, bank faced similar protests and criticism for its role financing the pipeline. Activists criticised BNP Paribas of arranging an $8 billion loan to TotalEnergies to support various projects across Africa. That year, environmental groups also filed a lawsuit accusing the bank of worsening the climate crisis. Since then, BNP Paribas has pledged to stop investing in new oil and gas bonds, but critics say this is not enough. Activists vow to continue their fight, demanding banks cut ties with fossil fuels entirely to protect the planet's future.
The US Justice Department has reached a deal with Boeing over the 2 deadly 737 MAX crashes that killed 346 people. The agreement, which allows Boeing to avoid criminal prosecution, has sparked outrage among many families of the victims.
The U.S. Department of Justice announced on Friday that it has struck a deal in principle with Boeing, allowing the company to avoid prosecution for fraud charges related to the 2 fatal 737 MAX crashes. The crashes, which occurred in Indonesia in 2018 and Ethiopia in 2019, resulted in the death of 346 people. Under the terms of the agreement, Boeing will not be branded as a convicted felon, a decision that has been met with sharp criticism from victims' families and some lawmakers. Many had called for the company to face trial and be held fully accountable in court. Paul Castle, an attorney representing numerous victims' families, expressed strong opposition to the agreement. He described it as unprecedented and obviously wrong, given the scale of what he referred to as the deadliest corporate crime in U.S. history. Castle said his clients intend to object and will attempt to convince the court to reject the deal. As part of the agreement, Boeing has consented to pay an additional $444.5 million into a fund for crash victims. This is in addition to $343.6 million fine. The total payout will exceed $1.1 billion and includes over $455 million earmarked for improving Boeing's compliance, safety, and quality programs. Despite a backlash, the Justice Department stated that family members and legal representatives for more than 110 crash victims either support the agreement, support settlement efforts without a trial, or do not oppose the deal. The U.S. Department of Justice also confirmed that Boeing will no longer be subject to oversight by an independent monitor under this new arrangement. The final written agreement is expected to be filed in court by the end of next week.
Georgia's relationship with the European Union is under fresh strain following a series of political and diplomatic flashpoints. As tensions escalate, the stakes are becoming higher. Our correspondent Nini Nikolaishvili brings us more from Tbilisi.
Relationship between Georgia and the European Union have grown increasingly strained after the tense week in Tbilisi. Opposition leader Zoraida Paridze was arrested in court on Thursday, the days after an EU mission diplomat was denied to entry into the country. Those moves raised concerns in Brussels about Georgia's political direction. Critics accused the ruling Georgian Dream Party of moving away from democratic norms, with one EU lawmaker comparing Georgia's trajectory to that of Belarus. The government, however, pushed back. Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze accused the EU ambassador Pavel Herchinsky of being influenced by political forces hostile to Georgia's leadership. The EU rejected those claims. Foreign Affairs spokesperson Anita Hipper called these accusations completely unfounded and warned that they damage Georgia's EU membership prospects. Amid growing unease, some European officials are calling for the targeted sanctions against Georgian Dream's influential figures, including former Prime Minister Bidzina Ivanishvili. Now the EU is weighing its next step as tensions continue to rise. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi. A News.
Azerbaijan is once again taking the lead against Islamophobia. For the third year in a row, Baku is hosting an international conference tackling anti-Muslim sentiment. Launched after a UN resolution marking March 15th as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia, the Baku conference has become a key platform for global dialogue. This year, 12 major organisations are taking part. The focus goes beyond faith, addressing modern challenges like AI, digital media, and new forms of discrimination.
In our foreign policy, combating Islamophobia and promoting Islamic unity are key priorities. But it's also important to take practical steps, both at the government level and through think tanks. This is something we've consistently done over the past 3 years. What does this show? It shows that Baku is truly becoming a hub for political and academic dialogue. There's now a growing network, be it scholars or public figures from Europe or the Middle East, who stay engaged even after the conference. Research papers are being written and follow-up contact is maintained.
The message from Baku is clear. Together, we intend to take more informed, coordinated and concrete actions. We aim to send a strong message, not only to international organizations, but also to governments and political centers, especially in regions where Islamophobia is alarmingly severe, that these practices must be eliminated. Unfortunately, the situation is worsening. Discrimination is on the rise, and most concerningly, it is being normalized, particularly in countries that claim to uphold liberal values. This is unacceptable to us. That is why we firmly believe the number of supporting organizations will grow in the coming years. Already, many distinguished experts, academics, public figures, and religious leaders are taking part in this conference, each playing a unique and important role.
Armenia will host the European Political Community Summit in 2026, followed by Azerbaijan in 2028. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan announced on his X account and added that Armenia and Azerbaijan have mutually backed each other's bids to host the summit. This mutual support highlights a notable step towards cooperation between the two neighbours within the framework of the regional forum. Afghanistan is ramping up its climate diplomacy as environmental threats continue to grow across the region. The Director General of Afghanistan's National Environmental Protection Agency held talks with Azerbaijan's Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources to enhance environmental efforts. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more from Kabul.
A high-level Afghan delegation from the National Environmental Protection Agency, led by General Director Matiul Haq Khalis, has held a significant bilateral meeting in Russia with Azerbaijan's Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources, Mukhtar Babayev. Minister Babayev welcomed Afghanistan's presence at the 11th International Congress of Novosibirsk, calling it a vital step towards stronger regional cooperation. The Afghan side expressed deep appreciation for Azerbaijan's invitation to last year's COP29 climate conference and requested support for Afghanistan's participation in the upcoming COP30 summit in Brazil. Khalis also called for expanded environmental cooperation between the two countries, including joint projects, memorandums of understanding, and capacity-building initiatives. In response, Minister Babayev reaffirmed Azerbaijan's commitment to supporting Afghanistan in key international environmental efforts. Meanwhile, climate concerns at home are growing. A recent Japan Times report warns that Kabul may face critical groundwater shortages by 2030. The report highlights a mix of population pressures, climate-driven droughts, and over-extraction, making water sustainability an urgent challenge. As Afghanistan strengthens its environmental ties abroad, the hope is that international cooperation can help address the worsening impact of climate change at home. This is Sameem Bahis in Kabul for A News.
The skies above Turkey's Konya were filled with action as the Anatolian Phoenix International Search and Rescue exercise wrapped up. Held from May the 12th to the 23rd, the exercise brought together military forces from Turkey and 9 other nations in a powerful display of joint readiness and multinational collaboration.
Anatolian Phoenix 2025 International Search and Rescue exercise hosted by the 3rd Main Jet Base Command in Turkey's Konya has wrapped up. Military personnel from Turkey, the United States, Germany, Azerbaijan, Italy, Qatar, Poland, Romania, Slovakia and Saudi Arabia took part in this year's Anatolian Phoenix exercise aimed at enhancing coordination and interoperability in multinational operations. Within the exercise framework, complex scenarios were successfully executed, including search and rescue missions, coordinated airstrikes and joint operation drills designed to test the readiness and rapid response capabilities of all involved forces. On Visitors' Day, media representatives and official guests were welcomed to observe the exercise up close. Attendees received statistical insights and watched a specially prepared video highlighting key moments from the multinational operation. Guests then moved to the training range, where participants demonstrated various operational episodes in real time, showcasing the skills and synergy of the participating units. Capping off the event, the Turkish Stars, the Turkish Air Force's elite aerobatic team, delivered a stunning aerial performance, drawing applause from all corners of the international audience. Notably, the Azerbaijan Air Force stood out with their professionalism and precision, earning praise for their performance during the exercise. Anatolian Phoenix 2025 once again underlined the importance of unity in crisis response and the value of sustained multinational cooperation.
Well, that's all we have for now from Baku. Stay tuned to A News for more updates and have a wonderful day.